So, hi, this is Carala again, and today I'm going to be talking about direct and indirect pronouns. I talked a little bit about it before in video 1, but I want to go back into more detail about direct and indirect pronouns. And I have my trusty Rusty, well, it's not Rusty, but my trusty Apple here to help me, because just to give examples and whatever. Okay, so first of all, if you remember, in the first video, I gave a list, and I told you when it came to me, ite, inos, there's no problem, because they can either be direct or indirect, so you really don't have to know. I mean, not really. In the beginning, of course, as you learn to speak the language, you do want to know so you can get the nuances of the language. The real problem comes in when you're talking about, for the subject pronoun, usted, él, ella, or ustedes and ellos, ellas, because there it changes. If it's a direct pronoun, it's lo, it's right here. It's lo, la, los, las. And if it's indirect pronoun, it's le, and that's for the usted, and that's for the el, and that's for the ella. Or it's les, and that's for the ellos, that's for the ellas, and that's for the ustedes. Now, this is the general rule when it comes to direct and indirect pronouns, how to use them, because it really doesn't correspond in English. In English, we have a different way of determining what's direct or what's indirect. In Spanish, what is direct and what's indirect is very interesting. As I said in the first video, what's direct is when the object of the verb is almost like an inanimate object. It receives the action from the verb, but it receives it as if, but it plays no role. It plays no role at all. So if I say, I saw him, or he saw me, I didn't play any role in him seeing me. He saw me. I'm there. I'm the object. Or I took the children to school. The children aren't playing a role. They're almost like, as horrible as it might sound, like a bag of potatoes, and I took them to school. So when you're talking about the direct object in Spanish, you're talking about the object of the verb, and that verb receives an action, but it plays no part at all. When you're talking about an indirect object, now that's a little bit more complicated. Now you're talking about when the object either loses or gains, or maybe I should say gains or loses from the action of the verb, which is in return the action of the subject. The problem is every culture determines what is it to lose as well as what is it to gain. So what I did was on the board, and that's why I waited a couple seconds before I entered into the video. I have here verbs that normally take the indirect object, and I have verbs that normally take the direct object. Now, I'm not going to go over all the verbs, but you'll notice something here, that when you're talking about the verbs that take the indirect object, in one way or the other, the object plays a role. Now sometimes, especially in English, it's a stretch of how it plays a role. Where here, the object is almost inanimate. Even when it's animate, it plays the role of an inanimate object. For example, if I interrogate you, which is interrogar, that the object is direct, lo interrogué, right? It's direct. Also, mirar, te miró, or la miró, right? He saw her. It really did depend on the person that he saw. They played really no part in that action. But if you're talking about an indirect object, dar, por ejemplo, le di la respuesta, I gave you the answer, you, in a sense, and this is Spanish, you're playing a role because you receive something. Because remember I told you the definition is if you receive or you lose something in the transaction. I'm also going to have cards available that are going to explain maybe even better, and I'm going to make more videos that explain better or maybe in more detail of how you use the direct and indirect object. Also, you'll notice that it's not the same throughout the Spanish-speaking world, especially when you come to Spanish of Spain versus Spanish of, let's say, parts of Latin America. And the Argentinians don't do it the same, let's say, as the Mexicans. And the Mexicans probably won't do it the same as, let's say, Venezuelans or people from the Dominican Republic. So I'm going to leave this here for about 10 more seconds so that you can copy down. And I'll be back with another video on direct and indirect objects. Okay, so this is Corrala Ficklin McLean at iStudyGuides.com. Thank you.